Hello everybody in the chess world. I'm starting today a new section in this channel which will be crazy unusual openings. Let us get right into it. I'm going to start with one knight on c3 as you can see here on the board. Normally I will name any opening, but in this case I don't, because one of the things about this is that it can transpose into a lot of different openings and to a lot of different versions of openings. So I'll go straight into the thing. So the main answer you'll receive if you decide to play knight c3 will be either d5 or c5. So the basic idea is, let us say d5, we're just gonna play f4, and what we're gonna have is this, well, of course, bird opening. Let us say, let us play normal for black, e3, c5, knight on f3. So basically, we'll have this bird. Well, we're probably going to do b3 and bishop b2. This is really typical, only that in this birds, normally this knight will be on d2. So, well, I heard some colleagues criticizing this way of playing precisely because of that, like, what is that knight doing on c3? If the idea is to dominate this square by this bishop in here, and as I'm showing here, well, this light square bishop comes here to kill this knight and having this square. So people normally prefer this c3 knight in here on d2. So it will come to f3 and support the other knight on e5. But I'll show you right here, for example, that, well, it's just chess, right? We can always improvise and change the things. For example, in here, we can exchange, well, knight on e2. This is like castles, knight on e5. Well, this now goes into g3. Yeah, other people prefer to have it here to support this one. Lines like this is not necessary, so I'll show you just briefly these moves. This could happen. b5 and f5. There's another idea that I want to show you in this particular line. Look at this moment right here. So in here, you can see that this e2 square it's going to be the square for our knight to pass into the king side, and finally the square for our queen. So that is why it's cool before in the opening to play bishop b5, not only to kill this knight in here and have a stronger hold on e5, but because we wouldn't want to have this bishop on e2. If the bishop doesn't go to b5, for example, because, I don't know, black does play a6 on the open or we cannot exchange it, well, quite often this bishop goes right here. I am going to show you a game. Our main game is going to be one that I play on the internet where my bishop was on d3, so don't worry about it. I just wanted to point out some of the thing of this typical bird, but with the knight on c3 and the ideas with the light square bishop. Now, let us go to the pretty fun part, because, for example, let me take the arrows. After our first move, knight c3, you might encounter a lot of moves. So, for example, if they play e5, you always have a lot of options. But one that I really like is this first knight on f3, some sort of tango with white. Well, it's actually e4 is controlled, so they cannot advance. They could play, for example, I don't know, some sort of filator with d6. But one thing that I really like is, if they play knight c6, we have the option of playing d4. And look at this. This is a Scotch opening, but with our e-pawn still on e2. Instead of on e4. So it's kind of weird, because we might leave that pawn on e2, that we might leave it there and even play with, I don't know, g3 and bishop g2. That is one option. We might play it really solidly on e3. We might transpose into a pure Scottish, but whenever we want, maybe thinking about transposition. So this is one that is quite interesting. Now, f5 is not to be recommended for black, because here we can simply play e4. I mean, this might seem pretty obvious. You gotta know that in case they take it, well, I mean, e6 probably the best move here. We have options here, but in case they take it, we'll play d3. And this gambit, I mean, even the engines are giving us like almost a clear advantage already. This, the idea is to, of course, if they take, we'll take with the bishop, and yeah, we'll have all this attack against this king. It reminds me to the opening that actually starts with knight on f3, because I used to play the Dutch myself with black pieces, and I remember learning that against knight f3, f5 is not recommended because of the same reason. This gambit, in this case, after pawn takes, they play knight g5, and if d5, d3 again. This is, even engines are given, okay, this is much more studied. This has a name that I think it was Lipschitz, something like that. I don't remember the name of this gambit now, but this, although there is a lot of theory, it's not recommended really for black. So Let us go back to our main feature, knight on c3. So, well, one really cool thing. Recently, in a club game, I had this position d5, and after f4, my opponent played e5. And look at this, because I took it, knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4, g4, and like this we transpose into a Staunton Gambit, but with color reverse. Take takes, check g3, and queen takes d4. So this variation of the Staunton Gambit is it's much more preferable for white with color reverse. But in this case, we do have this knight on c3. So I played this line bad. Actually, I'm gonna show you that. Why not? I think I could show you that with white. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, this will be the same thing, but with color reverse. This is a normal version, the Staunton Gambit. And here we know that, well, the move d5 is not good because we will take it, and the same thing. Queen checks, g5, and queen checks. But you can see there is no knight on c6 in here. Okay, so with color reverse, I still played that move badly, that game badly. This was my position on this game that I played recently. But because, okay, it is a bad version of the Staunton Gambit with color reverse, but not so bad because we have this knight on c3. In fact, when I came back home, I learned that here, knight b5 is a good move for white because, well, we're forcing the exchange of knights. Of course, if they take in here, we check and then take a rook. We'll do the same in here, so it's complex, but after knight b5, white should keep an edge. One detail that it was interesting for me in the knight c3 is, this was something that I saw, actually, I was thinking about someday, like kind of blindfold. I was playing a lot of games with this knight on c3, and normally, yeah, what I saw more often was like, yeah, well, d5 and f4. I mean, this was a typical line, you know? But I remember one day thinking like, I was trying to kind of refute white's play. And I thought, well, what about g4? Because after knight on e4, this is typical, and there is this cool knight on e4, but I thought, well, knight on f6, this is really annoying, actually. This, I thought, I kind of really don't like it. And, I mean, of course, if I take it, well, black will take with the g or the f pawn, but let us say after e takes f6, we've defined the situation a lot. And in this, to me, it's hard to argue the fact that black is just better in the opening. That is why in here I will really recommend, and this to me really is a critical line, to play knight on f2. And I know that it still seems like one of the critical lines, because now the development move knight on f6 for black has just won a tempo. Yeah, but this knight on f2 is kind of weird and interesting, right? Our idea basically is to play knight g3, and sorry, knight on f3, g3, and bishop on g2. Then we can try, you know, we don't have to define quickly what we're going to play. So this is something that I really like as well, right? Well, this if f2 knight, I mean, it's like a weird thing. I want to let us suppose, you know, I don't know, something like that, like this. This actually can happen. And look, I like this formation of pieces. Really unusual knight on f2, which is really solid. At the same time, this knight might simply go to d3 and again dominate the e5 square. Then we're going to play castles. I like the flexibility, and this is something that we're going to see in our feature game. Like maybe later on, it's really normal to start attacking the center with c3. I mean, the pawns are really, really solid. But I think it's important for if you're going to play this to remember that in this position, the best thing is to play knight on f2, okay? So let me see. I put a lot of lines, and I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting any detail. I think I'm not, regarding the general opening. So yeah, I think it's fine. So let us go to our main move, which is one that I played recently on the internet. So I play knight c3, and my opponent played knight on f6, and after f4, d5. So we cannot, well, transpose into what will be the most normal responses, what you will see more often if you decide to play this knight on c3. So e3, why not just, I mean, cutting immediately any possibility of d4, as I should show you in the other line. My opponent went c6, and there's an interesting thing about this c6. Remember, I said that this bishop on our bishop, our light square bishop, normally wants to come to b5 to be exchanged for this knight, so we can dominate this e5 square while playing knight e5, so they putting a knight in there. So c6 is interesting because it's saying like, okay, well, you'll never, and my opponent is saying you'll never exchange that bishop for the knight. So I play knight f3, g6, b3. Remember, we have to fianchetto that bishop and to support again this e5 square, and also fight against this bishop on g7, bishop g7, bishop b2, castles. And again, this is a moment that I want you to see, because again, if we play, well, of course, our bishop cannot go to b5 or be exchanged by the b8 knight. So if we play bishop on e2, well, but that square normally has to be vacated for our c3 knight and for our queen. So don't be afraid of playing what I played, just bishop on d3. This is typical from other openings. When I say don't be afraid, is I know that, well, this is blocking the possibility of moving our d pawn. But remember that also I really like, we're going to talk about the flexibility of this move. So let us keep the game going. So knight b7, logical, castles. My opponent played knight c5 in here. I did not expect that. So, well, I mean, I could have played something like even queen on e2 here, right? Because, well, why not allow him to take the bishop? I mean, on the one hand, we said, well, it is our good bishop. On the other hand, is, well, remember, we said in the opening that one of the ideas is to exchange ourselves with white, this bishop for this knight, just to dominate on e5. So I could have let him play, but I decided to go back, because at the same time, this knight on c5 is kind of looking weird. And, well, I saw that if he plays knight on f on e4, I can take it, because remember, I'm threatening this knight here. So I don't know. Well, he could, I mean, of course, if he takes on b2, we just take it here and we win the material. He could, in that case, take with the pawn, but then, well, then knight on e5, which is one of the things that we are willing to do quite quickly, just putting this strong knight on e5. So he probably saw the same thing. So he played knight c on e4. So, well, now, actually, I could have taken that anyway, but I decided to play knight on e5. And my opponent played quite creatively. First, he exchanged and played knight on e4, bishop on b2. So now, yeah, the pin is on black's favor, right? This is a defended g7 bishop. This is a hanging bishop on b2. My opponent played queen a5, which I actually totally missed. And I was thinking, well, this is quite creative. I mean, he's just, massaging this d2 pawn, which, well, the idea, of course, is I could play d3 here, but he will get into c3. And, well, again, I can play knight e2, and after knight takes, queen takes. Well, again, this is kind of like standard strategy for us, right? Exchanging the light square bishop for the knight, and therefore having this strong knight on e5. This was totally playable and totally fine. I actually decided to, well, I also was looking at, I remember c4 as a move. Interesting. I was thinking, well, he could do something like queen takes e2, and I don't see what, I mean, I could exchange this and come here, and then I'll recover the pawn on c5, on g5. Also playable. But in the end, I decided to play c3, which looks awful, right? Because I'm closing the diagonal on this bishop. But I was trying to speculate. This is quite flexible, and I know that basically now that I've eliminated the threat over d2, well, whenever I want, I can play d3. Whenever I want, after playing queen c2, I'll be able to play c4. So I was like, well, c3 is not a definitive move. I can also play c4 later on. My opponent went queen c7. I think computers will recommend them bishop on f5, and here for white, well, let us say queen e1, because bishop e5 has the idea to fight against this queen c2. Remember, in this position, let me take out the arrows that I know that can be a little annoying sometimes. One of the ideas is if they let us, we're just gonna play queen c2, and then we can play maybe a rook on d1, maybe c4. So bishop on f5 was a good alternative. Now, well, queen e1 was an interesting move. My opponent went queen on c7. And, oh yeah, this is a particular moment. Queen on c7 was obviously hitting here. And probably, I think that my opponent was thinking, well, that I was going to play c4, because it's a pawn break that I want to make anyway. And that way, I allowed the bishop to defend here. And maybe going back, right? So, again, asking me what to do with the d pawn, because I have no piece to defend the d pawn. So, well, maybe we could get again into some d3 and, you know, knight c3 and something like that, queen d2 in exchange, maybe this position. I think he was looking at that. I decided to play queen c2 here. Again, more ambitious, and I am, you know, sacrificing a pawn on e5, which my opponent did not take, probably correctly. Still, I don't know, he played f6, which, well, this is positionally the wrong move. Not an awful move, but this is clearly not a good move. I mean, I want to check, well, in case he accepted the pawn sacrifice, of course, the idea was c4. I make my central pawn break and my bishop is hitting the queen. And for example, queen g5, this I did not see during the game. This is an internet game, 30 minutes plus 15 seconds per move for both of us. But I want to show you how creative sometimes the computer can be. Computer is suggesting pawn takes, and queen on d3. I don't know, to me it's curious, this line. It's just going after the d5 pawn. So it's interesting, right? I mean, let's say bishop here, threatening mate, we can protect it, and if rook f8, rook ac1, so now the c file is ours, so there is a lot of compensation for the pawn. This is one of the possible lines. But okay, after queen c2, he played f6, and after knight on f3, logical. I don't know, I think I was thinking, what is he intending? Like some e5 someday, some f5 closing it up, but leaving the e5 square. Probably none of those moves were good, so he played bishop on d7, c4. I wanted to do that anyway, and correct, well, because there is pressure here, of course, I'm threatening to take this, and the queen is hanging. Rook ac8. And, well, here I thought the most obvious natural sequence to follow up will be rook ac1. I protect my queen, and I insist on threatening c takes d5, but obviously black will play queen b8, and, well, again, the tables are turned. Now is black's rook is the one exerting some pressure over my queen. Well, I could always do the same, just play queen b1, but I don't know, this was a little bit dull for me. So in this position, I didn't even play rook ac1. I played d3. I saw something in particular, some lines in particular. After knight on d6, I actually played c5. I think he missed this because he thought, well, but knight on f5, my knight goes into a pretty ideal secure square, and he's threatening this knight takes on e3. Yeah, but I just simply play queen on d2, and I think that for the first time when I analyze this position, this game with the engines after the game, I think that for the first time, you know, the engine gave me like, okay, now you're without a doubt better. So it was interesting. And yeah, my opponent's idea was to go active. e5 he won. But look at this, and I want to insist on the flexibility of the pawns that we have, because now I decided that I could lash out with my pawns. And it is correct. Maybe not necessarily the best sequence, but look like at this. I just play e4. Now I can go with the pawns. And when he went away, again, going with the pawns. Takes, and g4. I mean, I was happy here because I didn't care much about the objective evaluation. I had already calculated things that to me were not necessarily better, but I like them both against d takes e4 and e takes d4. So I was expecting d takes e4 here. My opponent actually played the other move. Against d takes e4, of course, knight takes e5 was going to be my answer. And for example, knight e5, I can pin it. And after bishop on f5, I can just go here and try to pressure this pawn. So now, well, probably black will have to play h5 with an unclear position. If they go more natural rook c8, I saw that I had simple g4, and although it's risky because I'm opening up my king, I think I can then just grab the e-pawn. So going back, my opponent played e takes d4. There should be a playable move. But after bishop takes on d4, now he made the first clear mistake. He played bishop on e6. I don't know why he played that. I think, well, obviously because of what he played later on, his idea was to go like this. Maybe he felt that that his pieces were lacking squares or space here. But well, bishop takes d4 check was best, and after queen takes d4, rook c8. This was a logical continuation. I guess I could think about playing e5 here, but I could also just take the pawn, right? And c takes d5 is possible here, as it is knight takes d5 and bishop c4. I guess all of these positions should still be like a small advantage for me, I think. But okay, after bishop on e6, it's funny because in here I thought first playing about playing this takes, and now knight g5. But I ended up doing it the other way around because I realized there wasn't a difference. I mean, the only difference that I mean, I thought that, well, am I giving black a different opportunity? And I thought, well, the only thing that I'm giving is bishop on h6, but actually this doesn't work. I could just take it here, and I mean, and the resulting ending actually is gonna be awful for black, so no good for them. But black played, my opponent played queen d7, and now there is a not too hard to see, but there is a winning sequence. So I'll leave it to, I'll have a sip of water, and I'll leave it to pause the video and think. Well, yeah, the first two moves are the most obvious one, right? Like we exchange and then we include this check. Of course, there is a particular idea that you had to see, which is the third move. After king g8, what is the winning move that you all probably saw? Well, yeah, it is queen e5 invading. So, and it's funny because this bishop is basically out of squares. I mean, if they go to g4, remember, if they go to g4, not here, in here, g4, we can exchange that and then take this knight at the same time protecting our knight. This will be terrible. So, and it's funny, right? I mean, no rook can protect it, so he played the only thing he could do, but now, well, again, I'll ask you to pause the video and think, because it's the same sequence as before, it's actually winning, right? So remember, in this line, the winning sequence was exchange and sneak up on the e5 square. And here is the same. I mean, there are a lot of winning moves here. I mean, you can even try to be create more beauty. But listen, just exchanging in here, check, and the idea is just to go follow it up with bishop g4. But there is a nice tactical detail about this that, well, this is going to be the end of the game because now black is totally lost. But look at here. Here, I was disappointed because my opponent played king on g8, and I thought that I had a much more beautiful final blow against king g7. So first, I'll show you the game. It's quite obvious. This is losing bishop g4, and his last hope was to play queen on c7. This is the same resource that I was looking at if the king had gone into g7. We'll see that in a moment. But and here it's really easy. I mean, bishop on e6 check first is for free. Well, you can see the relationship here, right? I cannot take the rook because they'll take my queen. And if I take the rook, well, the rook recaptures, getting away from the threat of the bishop, right? That's quite obvious. But after this checking, check, and I took it, and of course he resigned. He can't even recapture the bishop because, well, now again, if he takes with the queen, I'll take the knight. And he can't take with the knight because it's Spain. I'll take the queen. But it was a little bit of a disappointment because in this position, if king g7, bishop g4, queen c7, now for the last time, I'll ask you to pause the video and think and tell me what is the winning move in here. There probably is more than one, but there is one that I had calculated that to me was, I wanted this to happen because final move is quite pretty. So pause the video and think. Well, yeah. Queen d6 exclam. I love this move. It's the total domination, right? Well, now, I mean, at minimum, I'm going to, well, factically take the exchange next turn. The rook, of course, cannot go away because they will hang the queen. And if they take it, well, it's so funny, right? I mean, I'm even attacking the rook's defender. So quite funny. Okay, so to sum it up, I think knight c3 is an interesting move, and there are a lot of more transpositions that you can possibly play. After d5, you're actually not forced to play this f4 line, but I like to show you that because it's quite solid, and there are really a lot of transpositions. So I hope you like this section. I'm going to be back with some crazy, unusual openings because, and I can tell you, I've played so many weird openings, mainly with black. And I've tried them in tournament rated, FIDE rated games, so I can show you some things about that. So as usual, I'll ask my cat. Well, actually, I can ask the dogs because now they're barking as crazy. But no, I'll keep asking my cat Citroneta to ask you to like, comment, share, and subscribe in case you like the video. And thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next time.